Welcome everyone to another Down Under Trading Show. We've had a bit of an October so far. Well, not so far. It comes to an end in about 5 hours. It was the path of least resistance for the Bitcoin dominance to go up. And we've noticed that with most of the alts sort of being left behind, there is a couple that have pumped up with it, namely Solana is probably one that comes to front of mind, and also TRB that's been just running crazy the past couple months. But Bitcoin's still acting within within its parallel channel. Now that we've sort of broken up above the 31k, 32k mark, I think it changes the landscape a little bit, particularly around where floor prices are. I'd be surprised to see us dip up back under low 25k, but when we chuck up the charts a bit later, we can have a look at that. We're doing a bit of sideways consolidation since the big pump. That's just it's more or less people. The large institutions that have multi-millions in these long positions will be unwinding them, taking profits. There's been a lot of liquidations happen. So it will also be shorts opening up and building liquidity on both sides of where the range is at the moment. It's interesting how Bitcoin has had such a massive pump given what's been going on in the stock market space. We have seen stocks predominantly be red across the globe during this period. So the correlation it's unwinded a little bit, but I do expect that to sort of come back together. The Dixie has come into resistance, which I'll put up some information about the Dixie and what that is and how it works. But we've seen that come into a bit of resistance and doing a bit of sideways movement. It's a bit of rain. It's ranging at the moment, and that's provided a bit of stability for the euro, the Aussie dollar for those that are from Australia, and also other currencies against the USD pair. The yen's probably been the one that's been keeping the Dixie up because it's been falling against the US dollar. I'll just have a quick look at Sweat just so Zenon can get to bed because he's going to be up in a couple of hours. This is sort of what I had expected to happen after the US launch. I did say that I thought we could get to 1 cent, which we did multiple times. We've gotten there, and since we've gotten there, we've been doing a lot of range trading to the side. This could be reaccumulation or it could be distribution. If we're getting distribution, then we should expect a leg down from here into a new range, likely breaking the 0.0085 level. If it is accumulation, then I think we should expect another test of the 50% level at 0.0107, which acted as resistance about at the start of October. I think it was the week of the launch where we got rejected from the cycle high. We should at least expect a test of that, likely to possibly be broken.
It also seems that the 24-hour trading volume has taken a massive hit. There was some really kind of strange trading volume with Huobi around that time. Obviously, we had a week. I think we posted 25 mil plus in about 4 or 5 days. It was averaging about 7.25, 7.5, and that's just dropped off completely. Now down to about 1.125 and 1.5 as we speak, I think this morning. What are your thoughts around that at the moment? Do you think that's just the down to the launch, or do you think that is trader sentiment, or do you think that's how do you read that?
For me, I feel like it's down to the launch. I always thought, and I was fairly open in what my thoughts were, that I felt we were going to continue in an upward trend until the launch. And then I was fearful that it was going to be just, it's going to, the way forward is going to be similar to any other news event that affects a single coin, whether it be the XRP versus SEC case or the fake news on the Bitcoin pump. It's going to, after the event has taken place, I felt it was going to fade. And so far that looks like what it's doing. But it's still holding above some key levels. So this could be just a bullish sideways action for continuation up. And until we start seeing key levels broken to either the upside or the downside, you really don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, just as an observer's point of view, I mean, there was some interesting movement yesterday. I think there was a buy totaling about 4.5 mil, which caused quite a large spike. Obviously, that's fallen away, and there was quite continued high sell pressure after that, and it took a quite big dip this afternoon. Like you say, I mean, it does seem to be chopping between kind of that those thresholds at the moment. But yeah, like you said, there's some key points around that, and hopefully it will provide movement in the right direction sometime soon.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I obviously do have my own specific thoughts and opinions on it, but I've got to save that for the premium members. I can't be giving away all the secrets, here. So I'm just going to talk about what's happened and what's happening. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. I do have some ideas planned for Sweat, so we'll just have to wait and see where that goes. I'll just
Yeah,
talk
I was
about
just about.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
I was just going to move on to ADA. That was all. So ADA's had a decent run up. Where were we? From about 24 cents up to just over 30 cents. You know, it's nothing to be sneezed at. But it is rejecting at the moment. And I will show the chart a bit later. It is rejecting at the moment. But it has had a fairly sustained run. So is it rejecting to come back down, or is it rejecting to go higher? That's the questions that you need to sort of ask yourself. Zooming out can generally help with answering those questions. The further you zoom out, the less impact the moves seem to have, and also checking against the Bitcoin pair. And we can have a look at both of those once we start moving to the charts. But there is a lot of depends on the landscape you're looking at. In crypto at the moment, there's a lot of bullishness, almost euphoria, I would say, within crypto. And it's interesting because when you look at Bitcoin, it's obviously made another all-time high, another high for the yearly high. Whereas you can't say the same for a lot of the alts out there. Just thinking of a couple, there would be Link, Solana is another one. PRB would be a third one, and perhaps Rune. But once you start rattling off 4 or 5, you really start to have to think about where the rest of them are. You know, there's over 20,000 alts out there, and once I get to about 5 alts, I start struggling to name any more. So that would tell me that the entire alt market is not keeping up here. And I think that that's going to continue to be the case. Yes, there will be some that are outperforming. But for you to have been able to pick who they are going to be before the moves happened is going to be extremely difficult, and it's almost gambling. I mean, you know, Solana, everybody's heard of Solana. I'm sure there's a lot of people that got in early, such as yourself, Simon. But
I wish I
is a
bought
bit.
more.
That's what everyone says, mate. That's what everyone says. That's what everyone sort of, you know, talks about. Is it's easy to talk about it in hindsight, you know. I was reading, I think it may have been Muji was talking about, he was asking whether Ape was going to get back under $1, and same as Nia. And for me, if you're in Bitcoin, it shouldn't really matter, because if you're looking at the Bitcoin ape charts or the Bitcoin Nia charts, they're consistently putting in lower lows. So what my idea would be in that instance is when you start seeing that chart starting to flip, and I don't have any dry powder left, I would start to sell a little bit of my Bitcoin and moving at that into Nia or into Ape. And you might get into Nia or Ape at $2 or $3, whatever it might be, doesn't matter. But you've missed out on those early gains on Ape and Nia. However, you'd be riding the faster horse, in that being Bitcoin, and then you're basically moving the funds around, and that's exactly how the markets work. You see Bitcoin, it's had a massive pump, and now it's sort of done a bit of sideways movement. And since it's done a bit of sideways movement, we're starting to see a few of the alts start now popping off, because the liquidity is that people are realizing their profits in Bitcoin and now moving them to the alts. And then they start with the Ethereum, then they go to the large caps, they go to the mid caps, then they go to the memes, and then everything dumps and the process starts again.
Should we just touch on Solana, because I mean it's outperformed massively. I am pretty stunned. I mean, I've been a big fan of Solana for a long time. I've been quite a heavy investor with them for the last about 18 months. It's gone way above my expectations. I thought it'd tap out at about $27 at the moment. It pushed through that. I mean, it touched 37 last night. If it meets its key resistance, I mean, it could go up to 42.5 or even 45. I see a sell-off after that, possibly. What are your thoughts on kind of its bullish performance at the moment? Because I mean, you look back at about 2-3 months ago, and it wasn't in a really good place. Because I mean, it was touching about 1925, 1875 range. It's been a really surprising run, considering kind of how the rest of the alt market has been. Yeah, do you feel that's due to BTC dominance, or is it just due to the NFT market picking up? Because the NFT market has been, face value is about, I think, 10 cents in every dollar at the moment. Bored Ape Yacht Club are selling off at about 20,000, where once they were selling for 75, 80,000. It seems, there's been a real kind of pressure on the market, because a lot of new NFT projects aren't minting out at the moment, but Solana's always had a really strong NFT following. Do you think that has helped with the research that we're seeing at the moment, or do you think this is a purely trading an investment, and also institutions buying Solana, like ETH, like BNB, because it's got a relatively good following? What are your thoughts on that?
For Solana, I think it's purely trading. And the reason for that is I've noticed that the alts, which fell the hardest, the earliest, pretty much in line with Bitcoin cycle, how it bottomed in November last year. The alts that followed that trend are the ones that are performing a lot better at the moment. I mean, while Solana is exceeding expectations at the moment with its uptrend movement, it's been doing fantastic. It's up, what's it up? Just about 4.5x from its low.
Yeah.
Whilst it's exceeding expectations now, it also exceeded expectations in the way down. From all-time high to the low in to the low last year, it dropped 97%. That's massive for me, at least. Anyway, that I think that's a huge drop for something to drop 97%. That's 3% from zero. And so when you have such a large drop like that, you're going to expect these bounces. Like, it's still the all-time high was $250, and we're about 8x off that, or maybe more, about 9x off reaching that level. So for people that I suppose have joined the space in the past, since perhaps October last year, this is looking awesome. But for anybody that was sort of here before then, that may still be hodling, they're going to be still jumping up and down, saying, "Oh, when's it going to get back to $50? When's it going to get back to $80 when I bought in?" They're still down more than 50% on their investment. And that's sort of how I try to look at it. I just try to zoom out. When you start getting these large movements and you start getting the emotional side come in, saying, "Why didn't I buy?" Or I wish I got more, or I didn't buy any. Why didn't I buy any? I like to just look at a chart, chuck it on the weekly time frame, zoom out so it shows the last cycle, and you can start to see that, yeah, it's had a decent move, but wow, it's came from a very, very high, a very long way up to get to where it is at the moment. So am I too late? No, I'm probably not too late.
No, I mean, I say that kind of, from a purely kind of, trading background. I remember earlier on this year when it was, I think, 8.75, and I was trading on it daily. That's what I thought, just for the sheer greed factor. But I also went through the last bull cycle, and I saw the high highs.
Yeah.
I mean, we touched upon this, I think, in about March, or it wasn't March. It would have been June, July, I think, when we did one of our first DUT sessions, about where the ceiling with this was, because I think we were talking about $150 to $175, which I don't think, like yourself, it won't reach those high highs of the last bull run. I think there is a limit with it this time round, but it is interesting just to see where it's heading from a purely financial point of view, but also as a state of the market. There's been some really interesting movements this week with the ETH pump as well. That caught a lot of people off guard. What were your thoughts around that? Do you think, again, due to BTC dominance, because we had a chat with this very early in the morning, so I know your feeling was that the BTC dominance caused that. Are you still under that impression? Because it was a hell of a sell-off as well. It was fast, it was rapid. Do you want to just quickly touch upon that?
Yeah, so I suppose it sort of goes back to a little bit of what I was saying, where Bitcoin pumps and then the liquidity starts rotating through, and it'll go to Ethereum, then it goes to alts. And you can see that when you look at the say Bitcoin USD chart, and then Ethereum USD chart, and then, I don't know, pick ADA and Solana or XRP, doesn't really matter. And you could see how there's a delay in between the pumps. Or an easier way to look at it is just to look at the Bitcoin dominance chart. When you see the dominance going up, and you know that Bitcoin's been going up, well, you know it's leaving the alts behind, including Ethereum. But then when it starts having a little pullback, then you know that the liquidity is starting to move around, particularly if Bitcoin's chopping sideways. It means something else is growing in the space. What could it be? More than likely, it's going to be alts, particularly Ethereum. Ethereum's going to have the most impact on the dominance. So that's sort of where I sit with that. Yeah, I think
Okay,
we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We've had 10 weeks of straight up on the Bitcoin dominance. So I think we're due for a bit of a pullback.
Okay, that's really interesting here. I mean, Aldrich's got a really good question around kind of the recent UK regulations. He asks, do you think it's going to cause any big moves in the crypto economy mid to long term, considering it's the third biggest crypto economy in the world? I mean, we've touched upon this a few times over since the announcement of the regulations. Obviously, a lot of the CEXs and DEX are playing hard and fast with the UK government at the moment. Personally, a lot of them have pulled out. A lot of them are changing the regulations really quickly. Do you think this has affected BTC dominance? Do you think there's been some commercial sell-off and retail sell-off within the alt market to help stabilize BTC at the moment? Or as an outsider, over in Australia, an observer, do you think that this has had no effect on kind of, BTC performance at the moment? Or, what are your general thoughts on this?
I think it's had little effect, to be honest. Reason being is that there was a fair bit of warning given about it. I know it was about a week or 2 weeks perhaps, but in crypto that's a long time. It wasn't a hammer drop, so I think that it's had little impact in that regard. I mean, I know that some of you guys from the UK have been having issues getting onto exchanges, but there is still avenues out there to be on an exchange and to be buying or selling. There's some exchanges that don't require KYC, or you can use VPNs. Like, there's a lot of different ways of getting around the system. But to answer Baldrick's question, I think that this is a good move. What the crypto space doesn't like is uncertainty and not knowing, and that goes for any economic landscape. Not knowing is what creates fear. What creates sell-offs. So the fact that they're going to be bringing in some regulation, I think, is a great thing. I don't think it's really going to affect the way that the market behaves. But yeah, I think what I was reading, they're looking to bring it in 2024, mid 2024, something like that. So I think that's perfect timing to be onboarding more retail into the bull market. It'll help.
Yeah,
It'll
I
help
mean,
help keep the market direction going.
I've expressed my personal thoughts in this space a few times. Richie Sunak, he's the UK Prime Minister at the moment, is looking to create a digital pound. I've also read there are, advanced kind of talks within digital euro as well. Obviously, the regulations, of what's happening in America, it's going to bring profits down. It's going to prevent rug pulling. It's going to be creating a more stable environment. There was a really good article I found on FT, which I posted on another server, which I will put in this server as well, explaining kind of the ins and outs of kind of where this is at the moment. I mean, long term, obviously, I think it will bring more stability to the market. It will bring in second, third generation investors, as long as it does not get overly regulated like the US. I mean, obviously, there's issues around staking in the UK at the moment. There's issues around some of the more traditional avenues that have brought kind of investors into kind of crypto. But in terms of stability, if you take that away, the profits will go down, and it will be treated like any other market, like traditional stocks and shares, oil, precious metals, etc., etc. Yes, the profit margins won't be so high, but consumer confidence will be there, and this will drive market prices up. Eventually, like Borky said, like any other market, I see this as short-term pain for long-term gain. You've got to look, a year, 2 years down the line. All right, it might not have a massive effect on this bull run, but if you're still in crypto in 3-4 years time, that is a time where actually you are going to see the long-term benefits of this, hopefully anyway. And that's my 2 pence on it, and I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, you're right. I think for me, the whole regulation thing, I think it's more or less just an excuse from the governments of the world. Crypto is a space where they have very little control, and they're unable at the moment to have the control to extract the taxes out of it properly in a controlled fashion, where they can go and say, right, you owe me 10 grand or whatever it might be. And that's why I feel like they've been coming down very hard, because they're fearful of not having that control. And here in Australia, they're looking to bring out the digital Aussie dollar. We've got very tight rules and regulations. I don't think we've got a final regulation out as to how things are going to work, but that's what they've been working on. I mean, Binance pretty much pulled out of Australia. I can still jump on there, but I can't on-ramp fiat or off-ramp fiat. In the UK, similar things have happened. In the US, the same things have happened. And once there is regulations, I don't actually believe that that the space is going to be any safer from rug pulls. I think it's just going to allow the governments to be set up enough where they can start extracting money from the users within the space. Because at the end of I don't see how having a regulation is going to stop a rug pull when they can't control what's happening on Solana. They can't control what's happening in DeFi. They can see everything on chain, so they'll be able to basically be what Zach XBT is on Twitter, where we could talk about what the rug pull that's happened, but they're not going to be able to do anything to stop it in the first instance. Yeah, people that are wanting to do rug pulls, it's a bit like a criminal. There's laws out there, but they still go around and break the law because that's what they are intending to do. If you're a rug puller, your intention is to rug pull, regardless if there's regulations or hoops to jump through. Yeah, I just don't see it being stopped, especially when it's not the blockchains and whatnot aren't owned by an individual in a single country. You got validators around the world. Some people living in the Bahamas, in Netherlands, in Africa. It's too hard to control all of that. So yeah, I think it's just use for them to get involved and get their slice of the pie.
I mean, it's a really interesting point, and I mean, we've had quite long discussions around this. I mean, it's just a different point of view. I think living in the UK at the moment, and I think everything you said is really valid, and I agree with a lot of it. I think I just have different hopes and expectations around kind of, what the British pound or the British digital pound might bring for the economy at the moment. Long-term growth, etc., etc. And I think I take it from a very different point of view. But again, I completely agree with what you said, and this is why, we always talk about, doing due diligence about any project you're getting involved with. Work out your dollar cost average. Look into the project. How I got involved in Sweat is obviously, I heard about the process. I went through all the tax returns. I found out all the personal information I could about the company. I looked into Oleg. I've looked into kind of Jess, who's kind of more behind the scenes now. She's an MBE, etc., etc., etc. I spent about 4 weeks trying to find out seed funding, private investment, private equity, before I even, spoke to Oleg. But I always knew I was going to get involved heavily. That's an example of, if you are, it's no secret to anybody in here about how much I've invested. Um, and it's considerable sum of money. I have the belief of this project, and I'm going to leave it there on that side of it. But what I'm trying to use an example of, any project you're going to get involved in, especially startup, even BTC, do your due diligence. Have to kind of, preach on this a little bit to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, it's your money. What we try and do on this server is we try and teach, how to look at the charts from an educational point of view, how to interpret that data as well, but also about, best practice around safe investing, best practice about due diligence, best practice about kind of dollar cost average as well. You know, yeah, Borg, have you got any thoughts around kind of that type of practice as well while we're touching upon it?
Yeah, well, I guess being educated in what it is that you're trying to do is the first and foremost important topic that I try to push. I don't think that you should be day trading or investing in a way that you're unsure of. And whether that's doing your own due diligence and research on a project to invest long term, or it's understanding how to analyze a chart and use indicators, whatever it might be, you need to be all across it in that respective area. Because that just goes into the whole risk management of it. You know, you can't go drive a car unless you've had driving lessons and obtained a license. In this space, there is no licenses issued, so you need to be the regulator of yourself and say, right, am I capable of doing this or not? And pass judgment in that sense. That's how I like to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. Is there any other kind of tokens you want to look at?
Yeah, I might start sharing my screen and we can have a look at some of the charts. Thanks, Baldrick.
Thanks, man. I'm just seeing BTC's just kind of doing a little bit of movement at the moment. I'm surprised, I did touch upon this last week. I thought it was going to go down to 32, 500, the 33 kind of 250, 500, and it has generally bounced every single time. I know it's touched it once or twice, but there has been, decent support with this. I would thought if it broke that, it was going to kind of go back down to that 32,500 for a while and then bounce. But it has, it's been surprisingly buoyant over kind of, the last week.
It's actually quite bullish with how it's been moving, and holding up at this 34,500 level. To me, I've got the immediate key levels, which I think I've mentioned, and that's 36k thereabouts, which is the top of the channel. It also has confluence with the fib extension, and then to the downside, it's the breakout level of between 31 to 32k. 32k was acting as resistance, but we got very limited closes above the 31k area, so that's why I use that as the range. I don't want to give away too much, but I sort of think we're more than likely to go up before we go down, just with how it's been sitting here. There isn't a lot of room to the upside for me, I don't think. I mean, there's definitely key levels above 36k, and the longer that this sort of goes sideways, the more likely I sort of think that 36k is it's just going to be another level that it gets passed through. But and I've said all year long, I'll just go out to the weekly. I've been saying all year long that I sort of thought we're going to finish off the year let me get the dates right at the bottom, in this pocket here between 33.5 and 37.5. Why? Because it's still within the bounds of this channel. I don't think we're ready to break out of it yet. And we've also got the trend line from the lows running through. We popped below it for about 2 months, but now we're back above it. So that, I don't want to give away too much because I need to save some stuff for the premium guys. But that's sort of where my thoughts are sitting with Bitcoin at the moment. I'll just have a look at sweats because I was talking about it a little bit earlier. I know that there's a number of guys on the line that are quite interested in sweat, myself included. I need it. Right. There's a lot going on this chart. I've got fibs drawn everywhere, but that's okay.
No worries, man.
So that's the high time frame 50% level I've been talking about that we got rejected from back at the start of October, and then we've just been going more or less sideways since. Like, you could say that's a higher low, and then you've got a closing higher high, but now we've come back down and we've put in a lower low compared to this point here. So I think it's just better to look at this as sideways drop. Don't get too embroiled in whether you got high lows and high highs, because it all is very much the same. And then we can see we've got the lower side, 50% level. So as long as we're sort of between there, it's just in no man's land, just sideways chop. And it's just a matter of whether this is accumulation or distribution. Distribution, we expect this to get tested. Accumulation, we expect this to get tested. So it's just a waiting game. Wait and see what happens. I actually haven't bought any more sweat. I did get close to pulling the trigger on a buy. It was in this week here, actually, on Friday. But I decided against it because it goes against what my original plan and idea is. So I said, nah, don't do it. Instead, I was going to take a long, but then I had to jump on a plane. So it didn't happen. But that's all good. I might actually have a look at XRP just so I could talk about what I posted up yesterday. So I made the post on, I think it was around here somewhere, could have been, because I saw this little area here where we popped out of the channel. And for context, I'll show where the channel's formed from. So the channel is formed since May last year. We did get a little pop out there, but not much happened, came back in. That's the XRP SEC news. We're pumped right out of the channel, but then, as not many thought, came straight back into it. So that's just a bit of context for where the channels come from. Going back to the chart. So I saw this happen here. It popped out, came back in, but then was going sideways. Normally, when you see this sort of happen, when it pops out of a channel and comes back in, if it's getting nicely rejected, it's going to start falling away pretty quickly, not go sideways. The fact that it started going sideways had me thinking, well, I think we could break out here. We'll break out, we'll test, and then we could take off. And so we broke out, we tested, and we started taking off. And I got in, would have been around in this week here, I reckon, because it was this move happened overnight Aussie time. And then I started seeing it fading. And I was starting to get a bit concerned because I was feeling that if we fall back in the channel, it's going to happen in reverse. We're going to fall back in, we're going to test, reject, and then start tapering away. And this was just a fake out. So I bought in these dips here when it fell back in the channel. I sold about 90% of my bag on the test of parallel channel because I figured if it's going to test and reject, if it's likely to come back up to test and reject. So that's a good time to exit. It's a safe spot to exit because it should come up there. But yeah, it looks like it's just gone on a big pump. So I'm glad I kept $50 on in the trade. But it doesn't, just because it's pumped, I don't feel bad about closing my trade back here because I had an idea. It went against my idea. And so you need to be able to have, I guess, the balls to say, right, my idea didn't work. So I need to close my trade here because if I don't, and I think it's going to keep going up, it could fade. And then you could end up, losing 50% of your bag or 80% of your bag, whatever it might be. So I'm more than happy to taking 20% profit on the vast majority of my trade, and just writing out the rest. I did also say, and I didn't post this in the chat, and that it was when we were coming up to test the breakout. I did post in the premium a picture of this and circled this area here, and I said it's key that we get a closing candle above this level. If we get a closing candle above this level, we're likely to keep going up. However, if we reject and we fall back in, then I was going to look at cutting the remainder of my position that was open. So it's good to see that, closed above it, and then we took off. Now we just got a bit of sideways action. So we'll see what happens with the rest of this move. I don't think it's quite over yet, but it will be soon. Was there any charts that anybody wanted me to have a look at? Is there any questions in the chat?
I think just from Starseed asking if BTC can go down to 27k or lower, which I think you covered when you were doing the charts.
Yeah, Starseed. Look, I think it definitely can. Definitely can get to 27k or lower. I don't think too much lower than 27k. But yeah, it certainly can get down there. It is quite bullish at the moment, and there is a lot of key levels that it does have to break through to get down there. Namely that being 31 to 32k. So could happen. No worries, Starseed. And Mystic's just asked if we can have a look at an injective. Yeah, no worries, we can have a look at that. Yeah, so Inge is still on its warpath, but it has come into some resistance now. So you see those circled tops there? That's going to be acting. That it was resistance back then. It's going to be resistance. It should act as resistance on the initial attempt. I doubt it's going to push through on a first attempt. So we might see a bit of a pullback here. I mean, that's a massive candle last week for Inge. So we could see a bit of a pullback here to test the breakout levels around the $10 mark before coming back up again. I'll just go into the daily. And we've got an engulfing candle here for yesterday as well. So it may not come back down to the $10 mark. We could even just do a little bit of sideways, maybe pop down and test around that $12 level before having a second attempt at $14.50, $15. But Inge has got one of the best. Sorry, guys. Inge has got one of the best looking charts, and even Inge Bitcoin looks really good too. Go to the weekly. The weekly chart even looks really good too, but it is starting to come up to the highs here. So you'd think that it's starting to. You would expect it to start to run out of a bit of steam, but in saying that, if it does push past this level, then it starts going into discovery, and it can really. That's when they can really run. It's probably a bit soon though, I think, for some of these bit bigger player alts to have a really, really good run and stretch their legs. There's not enough liquidity around for them. However, you are going to get a couple of unicorns here and there, and Inge could definitely be one of them. It's got the charts to suggest that it has the potential to be that unicorn. So, did anyone else have any questions?
I think that's all, my friend.
That's all good.
No worries, guys. Look, you can always post questions to us during the week. Myself, Borgie, Nomad.
Yeah, that's right. You can chuck it in the general chat or DM one of us. That's no problems. And yeah, we can bring it up at the next catch up. Thanks for joining, guys. Appreciate you guys jumping in and joining us. Probably going to try and do another show in a couple of days' time for the premium, where we go into a lot more in-depth analysis with opinions and thoughts on price, and it gets a bit more descriptive. But yeah, for now, thank you, and hope you guys enjoyed.
Thanks, Baldrick. Thanks, Tank. Thanks, Darcy. Thanks, everybody. Mystic as well. Always good to see you guys. We'll catch you next week, guys. All right. Take care, dude.